coming out. Thank you for helping us. Thank you for fixing this. And I am going to now introduce our final speaker today. And he has come down from Tallahassee, and he has led our charge here in the Florida Democratic Party. He has led our charge for our voice, our vote. And it is my honor to introduce the chairman of the Florida Democratic Party, Chairman Rod Smith.
I just want the person here that wants to follow him speak and raise their hand. I feel like the guy that's batting after Babe Ruth. There's not much that I could say today that would equal the message that you've just received from a person whose life and the people he's worked with, whose life has been most impacted in 1 or 2 generations by the single change of the access to the polls. And it has been said by Bill Clinton that not since the poll tax has there been anything as aimed at voter suppression in this country as what 11 Republican governors led last year, and that is, as one of the speakers said, creating a problem that didn't exist, that's voter fraud, and then finding a draconian answer to it, which is suppressing the vote. And it wasn't just suppressing the vote, folks. That would have been even less transparent than what they've done. There must have been a checklist somewhere. Somebody must have been sitting around the desk saying, okay, who voted for this president last time? And they said African Americans voted for the president in record numbers. And they said we need to lower that vote. How can we do that? And they did the check and they said, you know what? On Sunday, before the elections, we find that there's a large number of African Americans who go to church and leave their church and they go vote. So if we really want to suppress that segment of the voter, let's take away Sunday voting. And they did it. Yeah. And they said, who else? They said, well, this president, because he talked about the audacity of hope, because he talked about the future with such a vision, he did very well among our young voters. In fact, we set records in turning out our young voters and our college voters who you heard speak here today. And they said, well, what can we do about that? And they said, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we come up with an idea that would drive down their vote by simply making it more difficult for them when they're at college to vote, and if they do vote because they registered back home, make it more difficult to change that registration, so that if they vote, they'll vote a provisional ballot, and we know that most of those don't get counted, or a huge number don't get counted. And they said, that's another idea how we'll drive down the vote. What else can we do? And they said, well, the other thing we found is that a lot of people that voted last time voted for the first time in a generation because they've been registered to vote. So what we need to do is we need to make it harder, and we need to intimidate people from the exercise of registering people to vote. And they said, we got an idea. Let's come up with a plan that so intimidates those who register voters that the League of Women Voters, that throughout my life has been the most blatantly nonpartisan, whose only purpose to exist has been to register and help people vote, to enact and make sure that the enfranchisement of voters expands. Let's make sure that we do something so draconian that the following happens, and it did. That the League of Women Voters said, we're not going to run the risk with our members and our organization, and we're going to cut back from registering people to vote. Folks, this was not an accident. This was not in response to a problem, because as Coach Enriquez said to you so well, in 2000 when we really looked at the problem on the recount, what we said was what we really need to do is make it easier for people to vote, make it more orderly for people to vote, and get greater participation, and we did that. And you know what happened? They lost, and they didn't like it, and they said, you know, the best way for us to win is to run the vote down, and that's what this is all about. It's about suppressing your vote, but it's mostly about suppressing people that they don't want to vote in November of 2012. And I got to tell you, if I had the candidates they have right now, I'd want people to stay home too. I want to thank Bill Nelson. I want to thank Dick Durbin. I want to talk to you today about getting over there. If you're lined up to testify, testify truthfully. Your communities, nothing is more important than participation. The very heart of our democracy. The very soul of our democracy. That which the rest of the world, Eastern Europe, Asia, Africa, have given sacrifices that remind us of what our forefathers did just to get the right to go down and vote. It's not about who wins. That's only a part of it. It's also about, at the end, we've always had the most orderly transition of power in the history of the world. And why? Is because you can always go home and say, you know what? We all voted, and that's the people's will. But if you want to see democracy in danger, my friends, I'll promise you this, is when people find that they really didn't have their vote counted. When people feel that they really aren't part of the process. When folks throw up their hands and say it just doesn't work. I promise you this. There were generations of Americans who gave their lives, gave their sacred honor for one thing, and that was to make sure that their children and their children's children had the right to vote. That's what this is about. That's why it's important. That's why we're going to win this time. That's why these laws will be repealed. That's why we've got to make progress, making sure that everybody is part of democracy, because in the end, that's the only way we all win. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you again, everybody. Please stick around. We do have a hearing to report on later. And we want to just tell you, please help us. It's just, no matter how hard they make it, we're going to work that much harder, like they said. And thank you all for coming out. We really appreciate it.